Word life, y'all. This is basic Regretonomics, and it's time for you to know you can't see me. John Cena has seen his fair share of ups and downs over the years. When he was at his peak, the leader of the CeNation was called overrated and overbearing, a man who carried the WWE brand for a decade, both to its benefit and its detriment. He was supposedly a brightly colored cancer that represented the company's stifling of anything outside the status quo. But today, Cena's come out on the other side and is rightly acknowledged as a bona fide legend, a transformation that was only achieved through a combination of his lengthy tenure, his status as a beacon of charity outreach, and a gradual evolution of his in-ring style, followed by an equally gradual separation from the company once Hollywood came calling. I'll freely admit that I've occasionally thrown logs onto the fire over the years as a fan and a critic, but deep down, there's a lot to appreciate about the man who espouses hustle, loyalty, and respect. And this week, I'm gonna rank them, my top 8 picks for the best matches, moments, and feuds of John Cena's career. And if you don't like it, you can choke on D's nuts. Ooh, honey roasted. My favorite. Number 8, the Doctor of Thugonomics. This was undoubtedly the biggest turning point in John Cena's career. Had this not happened, then practically nothing else on this list would have either. Cena got off to a hot start in WWE, debuting on TV in June of 2002 against Kurt Angle and receiving an on-air endorsement from The Undertaker. But after a few months of so-so in-ring work and an unconvincing heel turn, his career was dying on the vine. In fact, it's often been said that Cena's job was most definitely on the chopping block if something didn't change fast. But fate would intervene during a bus trip on a European tour. Cena joined a freestyle rap session with Rey Mysterio and Rikishi that was overheard by Stephanie McMahon. Impressed with Cena's ability, she encouraged John to lean into his talents, to discard his bland persona and embrace his marky markness. Then on the Halloween edition of SmackDown, a star was born.
The old man's got a plan, and he's chilling in the building. Did I tell you I'm like light beer? I taste great nonetheless, feel it.
Cena took the opportunity and ran with it, doing a full 180 and transforming into the Doctor of Thugonomics. Wearing throwback jerseys and forming raps that were catered to his opponents, the gimmick was an instant hit. The irony of this jacked white boy from the Massachusetts suburbs suddenly putting on airs that he was from the streets gave Cena instant heat. Before long, he was out of velocity purgatory and was feuding with the likes of Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker. But the even greater irony in wrestling is, if you're a bad guy with a somewhat quirky gimmick and you really lean into it, the fans are going to respect you for it in the end. Cena was so good in his role that audiences grew to love the hot fire Cena was spitting, forcing WWE's hand and turning him babyface. And the rest, as they say, is history. The Doctor of Thugonomics gimmick breathed new life into a career that was on the verge of ending before it even began, and the momentum was surging. But of course, if you want to build a big star, you have to put him up against an even bigger star. Number 7, John Cena vs. The Big Show, WrestleMania 20. The late timing of Cena's rise meant there wasn't enough time to get him on the proper WrestleMania 19 card. Instead of a rumored live rap battle between Cena and Fabulous, or even Jay-Z, the good doctor dissed some cardboard cutouts instead during Sunday Night Heat, a far cry from what he did the following year. By late 03, The Big Show was arguably on one of his best and strongest runs. Under the Paul Heyman era of SmackDown, Show was presented as an imposing monster again, to great effect. He crushed Eddie Guerrero that October to win the United States Championship and became a gatekeeper of sorts to the main event. He was the last man eliminated by Chris Benoit in the 2004 Royal Rumble and was the first major hurdle for another future main eventer at WrestleMania 20. At the height of his popularity, John Cena swaggered his way into Madison Square Garden and hoisted the big man onto his shoulders before winning the match and the US title in a fun opener to the crowd's roaring approval. It was a great moment, at that point the biggest in Cena's career, and although we didn't know it at the time, it would be the start of one of the most impressive Mania win streaks. Number 6, Cena's Championship Coronation. The John Bradshaw Layfield experiment in 2004 was pretty wild when you think about it. In all the years Bradshaw spent in WWE up to that point, nothing about him really screamed main event. But when Brock Lesnar quit and SmackDown needed a new top heel and fast, Bradshaw became JBL, going from redneck ass kicker to upper crust Wall Street entrepreneur. The transition was about as subtle as a clothesline from hell, but it paid immediate dividends when they put the WWE title on him within weeks of the gimmick change. JBL spent spent 9 months on top from 04 to 05. It sounds minuscule now living in a post-Tribal Chief era, but that period definitely felt like a slog to get through. Every month fans wanted to see him gone, but he'd always retain his title by the skin of his teeth in the most frustrating ways imaginable. And only now in hindsight do we understand why they made it so frustrating, to make it all the more satisfying when Cena finally beat him. While John may not have been front and center for his Mania moment, that was reserved for Royal Rumble winner Batista and his match with Triple H, his victory over JBL was still the ultimate validation, a stunning accomplishment for a guy who was so close to unemployment just a couple years before. This was also one of the final times where Cena wouldn't get a polarizing response from the audience. Case in point. Number 5, defeating Triple H and Shawn Michaels at WrestleManias 22 and 23. When you want to prove that your new star is a big deal, you want to make them out to be giant killers. Not just giants in the physical sense, but also those in legendary status. That's what they tried doing with John Cena, if only the fans are willing to buy into it. By 2006, audiences had begun to soundly reject the champ who was there. He stopped doing a lot of the things that made him cool, and the WWE universe let him know about it. But if the hardcore fans who booed Cena during those feuds with Kurt Angle and Chris Jericho expected to have their voices heard, well, they were about to find out what happens when WWE really wants to commit to a project. The negative reception for Cena made Triple H a god by comparison as they were headed towards a WrestleMania clash. Never mind the fact that he was meant to be the heel in this program, but that's neither here nor there. When it came time for the match in Chicago, 20,000 of the most hardcore of hardcores spat in the face of the kinder, gentler hero, with many hoping and praying that Hunter would politic himself into a victory. But it was not to be, as Cena tapped out Triple H after 20+ minutes. The message was clear: Cena was here to stay. A rematch was rumored for the following WrestleMania until Triple H blew out his previously untorn quad that January, sending Mania plans into disarray. And so, Shawn Michaels stepped up to challenge Cena for the title at Mania 23. Although it was a rare babyface versus babyface main event, Shawn leaned into the tweener role to add some necessary tension, reflecting the audience's anti-Cena inclinations. In the end, Cena went 2-0 against the DX Legacy, beating two of the biggest active legends at the time who weren't named The Undertaker. Many fans were upset at the time, but the matches were at least still of a high quality, and the wins were necessary to establish Cena's own growing legend. Number 4, the US Championship Open Challenge. In previous eras, WWE's top guys didn't usually stick around very long once their time on top had come to an end. Bob Backlund, Hulk Hogan, and Steve Austin are some examples of this. But it appears that John Cena had a much more positive relationship with the company than his predecessors. WrestleMania 31 saw the dawn of a new chapter for Cena. After fighting with The Rock across 2 Manias, then securing his legacy at WrestleMania 30, Cena regained the US title after beating Rusev in a match at Levi's Stadium 1 year later. If only Rusev were able to use that tank he rode in on. Further cementing his reputation as a man of the people, Cena offered up his newly won crown to any and all challengers with the US title Open Challenge. From Dean Ambrose to Zack Ryder to Stardust to Cesaro, boy, I wonder what happened to all those guys. Cena battled them all in a series of awesome matches every Monday night. The Open Challenge also introduced main roster fans to Sami Zayn and turned Kevin Owens into a household name overnight when the NXT champion assaulted Cena and stomped on his patriotic gold. Yes, Cena ultimately won all these matches, but even his most vocal haters had to respect the level of work he was putting out. For years, John Cena was seen as a pariah by many fans, but this particular run that elevated himself, the US title, and his challengers in one fell swoop went a long way toward rebuilding his image. Number 3, John Cena vs. Umaga, Last Man Standing, Royal Rumble 2007. Before getting involved with the likes of Roman Reigns or The Rock, John Cena had previously tussled with the most intimidating member of the Samoan dynasty several years earlier. Debuting the night after WrestleMania 22, Umaga was presented as an absolute freight train, destroying everything in his path en route to the WWE Championship. Umaga got his shot at the title 9 months after his debut when he faced Cena at the New Year's Revolution pay-per-view. If you can believe it, the feud actually kicked off when Umaga interfered in a match involving Cena and the soon-to-be ex-husband of Britney Spears in Kevin Federline. Well, maybe you can believe it. Cena managed to eke out a win and break Umaga's streak of having never been pinned or made to submit, and naturally, a rematch was set for the Royal Rumble pay-per-view just 3 weeks later, last man standing style. Cena and Umaga brutalized each other in a bloody war that saw the champ tear apart the ring and choke Umaga out with the ring ropes, one of the company's last super violent matches before they decided to scale back on such fierce displays. Looking back on it now, the match was seemingly designed to prove to the fans who insisted on booing Cena that he was indeed a tough customer. And while it wasn't a total success, the match is widely regarded by many as one of his best ever, and it serves as a great reminder of his desire to earn the respect of the fans. Number 2. John Cena vs. Edge. Every top guy in WWE usually had one iconic rival. Stone Cold had The Rock, Hulk Hogan had Bobby Heenan, Shawn had Bret, and for Cena, his best rival undoubtedly was Rated R. The feud that would define Monday Night Raw's main event scene for a year kicked off at the start of 2006 when Edge cashed in his Money in the Bank contract to win the WWE Championship from a battered and bruised Cena at the New Year's Revolution pay-per-view. But Edge's glory was short-lived as Cena won the belt back 3 weeks later at the Royal Rumble. Once WrestleMania had come and gone, Edge and Cena renewed their beef from earlier in the year. Though Cena walked away from a triple threat at Backlash with the title in hand, Edge would cost him the gold against Rob Van Dam at ECW One Night Stand 06, briefly making him the most beloved man in New York City. Soon after this, Van Dam's push went up in smoke when he and Sabu were pulled over by police for being speedy and a little weedy. RVD's loss turned out to be Edge's gain as he won the title once again, setting up the next phase in the contentious rivalry. We saw everything from Cena attacking Edge in his hotel room and throwing him into the disgusting Long Island Sound, to Edge invading the Cena family home and slapping Cena's father. The two would trade wins while on their opponent's home turf. Edge beat Cena to retain the title in Boston, but John would get the last laugh at Unforgiven 06 when he beat Edge in a TLC match to regain the championship in Toronto. The two would reignite their feud in 2009 with Edge actually coming out on top, but they eventually reached a mutual respect, as one does in wrestling, joining forces to fight the Nexus at SummerSlam 2010. The feud was a battle between the Golden Boy, who was supposedly handed the keys to the kingdom, and the Journeyman, who scratched and clawed his way to the top by any means necessary. It came at the perfect time of Cena's career and was his definitive rivalry, well, for a bit. Before we find out my number 1 pick, here's what are sure to be the most polarizing honorable mentions in Wrestling with Regret history. Or not. His debut against Kurt Angle. John Cena's prototypical debut against the Olympic gold medalist on that fateful episode of SmackDown in 2002 has since gone down as a pivotal moment in the show's history, our first glimpse of the man who would one day come to be its biggest star. While Cena's initial push wasn't nearly as impressive as those of fellow OVW alumni like Brock Lesnar or Randy Orton, he still gave a solid effort against one of the generation's greatest performers, got a handshake from The Undertaker, and managed to fit in some of the company's new branding all on the same night, a sign that big things were to come for the youngster. John Cena vs. CM Punk, Money in the Bank 2011. For all the talk of Cena's reputation for failing to put anyone over, this is a rare but strong argument against it. If I ever make a countdown for the best CM Punk moments, this will obviously be at or near the top of the list, but Big Match John deserves credit for his role in it too. He played the establishment guy perfectly, and the two over-delivered, putting on perhaps the best match of their careers and certainly the match of that year. It's a damn shame that the summer of Punk became what it did, but we'll always have Chicago. The Firefly Funhouse match. Once again, this is a moment that's more appropriate for a best of break countdown, but the Firefly Funhouse wouldn't have been the breakout moment of the pandemic WrestleMania if it weren't for the history between these two men. One of the most egregious examples of Cena winning a match he probably should have lost was against Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania 30, but the company had a chance to make good on this mistake 6 years later in dramatic fashion with the Firefly Funhouse match. No doubt originally planned as a somewhat traditional match, the restrictions put in place by COVID allowed the company to take off the handcuffs and get really meta. The match explored Cena and Wyatt's larger role as characters, as well as their relationship to each other, with plenty of nods and references to the past, often at Cena's expense. Though the pandemic era of WWE gets stranger to look at with each passing day, it forced the company to think outside the box, ultimately giving fans one of the best cinematic matches of all time. He has returned from injury at the 2008 Royal Rumble. Look, truthfully, I didn't actually have anything written for this entry. It just came to me as we were filming this, and I didn't have anywhere else to put it, and it needed to be talked about, so here it went. Mr. Make-A-Wish. Considering this list is all about matches and moments and not necessarily his extracurricular work, this didn't really belong on the main list, but come on, it needs to be said. Despite all the hate he received from cynical fans for much of his career, John Cena deserves all the credit in the world for living up to his hero's creed through the Make-A-Wish Foundation, setting and smashing the record number of wishes granted to critically ill children. No snark, no sarcasm, and no hyperbole, this legacy is certainly one of the cornerstone achievements of Cena's career. And my pick for the #1 John Cena moment is John Cena versus The Rock. When it comes to quantifying what the best is in professional wrestling, there are some who will tell you that the best wrestlers, the best shows, the best matches are the ones that made the most money. And on the strength of that metric alone, this rivalry deserves to be in the top spot. The feud between John Cena and The Rock was born not from the mind of one of WWE's writers, but rather from the mouth of Cena himself. In a moment he has since publicly expressed regret and apologized for, Cena took shots at Rocky for abandoning his wrestling family and accepting Hollywood's golden embrace. I mean, those comments aged poorly for a great number of reasons. Aside from the obvious fact that Cena would do that very same thing himself a few years later, it was The Rock's involvement in Hollywood that made it possible for guys like Cena to transition to acting in the first place. Who's to say Cena would even have become the star that he was in WWE had The Rock stuck around to wrestle? The Rock was taken aback by these shoot comments, but would let things stew a bit before being named as the host of WrestleMania 27 in Atlanta. Finally, The Rock fired back for those earlier comments and hit Cena with some scathing burns of his own. With the long game in mind, The Rock cost Cena his title match against The Miz, setting things up for a match at the following year's WrestleMania. For the next year, the two superstars would trade verbal barbs in the lead-up to their marquee match. They even had a Mega Powers moment at that year's Survivor Series, teaming up against The Miz and R-Truth, back when they were both semi-legitimate heels. At times, the promos would get personal and add to the heat between them. Cena famously called Rocky out for having notes written on his wrist, another comment he has since regretted saying. Billed as once in a lifetime, Rock beat Cena in a match that was a bit too long and saw a couple too many finisher kickouts. It was put over as the lowest point in Cena's career, completely ignoring the main event of the previous year's WrestleMania. It was also meant to be the catalyst to what was supposed to be this really down year for Cena. And yeah, he went the whole year without a championship, but it didn't seem all bad for the guy. It's not like he wasn't still the #1 hero in WWE, or that he didn't win most of his feuds for the year. My favorite part was when they tried to spin Cena's real-life divorce in 2012 as The Rock's fault for some reason.
Both professionally and personally, because I could not get over my obsession with the fact that I failed.
Despite the billing, Rock Cena 1 was far too successful to leave it alone, so we got to see it twice in a lifetime at WrestleMania 29, this time for the WWE Championship that The Rock had won from CM Punk at the Royal Rumble. Man, they really did Punk dirty for that one. Cena got his win back and vanquished his opponent in the main event rematch, but Rocky not only lost the match and the title, he also tore his abductor muscle with 10 minutes to go before the finish. It was an injury so bad that it delayed the filming of his next movie, and no doubt cooled him off from wrestling for nearly a decade. With a victory over The Rock to close out the epic rivalry, Cena finally joined the ranks of all-time WWE legends. It's no coincidence that it was the last WrestleMania he would headline as well, the culmination of his career as the guy. The matches weren't perfect, and they needlessly sacrificed CM Punk's lengthy WWE title reign along the way, but the appeal of a rivalry that would transcend eras and generations did result in great business for 3 straight WrestleManias, and solidified Cena's place as one of the all-time greats, and that's why his program with The Rock is my pick for the best moment, match, or feud of John Cena's career. But were there any other big accomplishments of his that I couldn't see? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, hit that bell icon for all the notifications. Stay tuned for the rest of You Can't See May, where we've got some great Cena-themed content all month long, including my review of Season 1 of Total Bellas. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.